Hi, welcome back to the PhotoshopTrainingChannel.com. I'm Jesus Ramirez. In this video, I'm going to show you how to cut out a person from their background, even when you're working with a photo whose background you want to keep. Separating your main subject from the photo gives you a lot of flexibility when editing your photos. You've seen me use this technique before in my blurring backgrounds tutorial. But in this video, we will focus on the advantages of cutting out a person from their background when applying distortions like the Liquify filter or the Puppet Warp tool, and when repositioning a person within your photo. Okay, let's get started. The first step is to make a selection around the main subject of your image. In this case is this runner here. You can do that in several different ways. One of the easiest ways is to use a quick selection tool. In older versions of Photoshop, you will have to click and drag around the person to make a selection. In the newer version of Photoshop, you can simply press the Select Subject button, and Adobe's artificial intelligence, Adobe Sensei, will make a selection out of the main subject of the image. Make sure that everything is selected. Adobe Sensei missed part of his shoe, so I'll click and drag to add that in. I'll also make sure that the other shoe is selected, and I'll include the shoelace. Then I'm going to tap the Z key on the keyboard to enable the zoom tool, and I'm going to zoom into this area. What you want to do now is deselect the space in between his arm and body so that if we move the runner into another area, the background will match. To do so, select the quick selection tool, hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click and drag to deselect. You can use the left and right bracket keys on the keyboard to adjust the size of your brush if you need to. And you can hold the spacebar and click and drag and just pan through the entire image and make sure that you have a good selection throughout. It looks like I missed a part here. I'll click and drag to add, and I'll hold Alt, Option on the Mac, and click and drag to deselect from that area. The selection doesn't need to be perfect, but make sure that you select all the major areas of your subject. And it looks like the selection is now pretty good, so I'll double click on the hand tool to fit the image to screen. And what I'll do is I'll duplicate the background 2 times. So I'll click and drag into the new layer icon twice, and I'll name the top layer Runner, and background copy for the second layer is fine. And with the runner layer selected, I'm going to click on the new layer mask icon to make a layer mask out of the selection. What I did there is remove the background from the image, and what I'm going to do now with this layer is remove the runner from that background layer. So with that background layer selected, I'm going to hold Shift, click on the top layer, and then press Ctrl G, Command G on the Mac to put that into a group, and I can just call this group Edit. Then I'm going to expand the group, and I'm going to make a selection out of the layer mask. So if you hold Control on Windows, Command on the Mac, and click on that layer thumbnail, you would load the layer mask as a selection, and I can now come into my background copy and disable this layer so that we can actually see the adjustments that we make. What I'm going to do now is expand the selection so that it's a little larger than what it currently is. You can go into Select, Modify, Expand for that, and we can expand the selection 3 pixels. And notice now that we have some space in between the runner and the selection, and that's what we want. I'll double click on the hand tool to fit the image to screen. Then you can hold Shift and Backspace or go into Edit and Fill to bring up the fill window, and just make sure that under Contents you have Content Aware and press OK. Photoshop will then fill with content and it will remove the runner. In this case, the Content Aware does a fairly good job. I'm going to press Ctrl D, Command D on the Mac to deselect. And there's only one thing that we need to worry about. If I press the Z key on the keyboard, click to zoom in, you'll see that this area where his foot was is a little blurry. So I'll work on that, and I'll use the Clone Stamp tool to fix it. Hold Alt, Option on the Mac, and click to set a sample source. Then you can start painting in those pixels in a different area and hide the blurry pixels. I'll pan over and work on this area since it's a little blurry as well. And it looks like I need to fix an issue that we have here. I'll double click on a hand tool to fit the image to screen. And that's pretty much it. I've removed the runner from the background, and now I can work with him independently from the background. The next step is to select the runner, right click, and convert him into a smart object so that I can apply adjustments, distortions, and filters non-destructively. one of the adjustments that you may want to apply is a liquify adjustment. So if you go into filter, liquify, the liquify window comes up and you can zoom in by holding Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and scrolling up on the mouse wheel. Make sure that under view options, you have show backdrop and that you select the background copy. That way, when you make an adjustment, you can see the background that you edited. And now you can start adjusting your image. One of the things that you can do is make them more athletic. You can use the 4 warp tool for that. It allows you to push pixels. In this case, maybe I just want to push in his sweater just a little bit, just to keep him looking more athletic. And I can maybe shape the hoodie a bit. Obviously, all the adjustments that you make are subjective. Do whatever adjustments you feel add to your image. But the point is that notice how I'm just making all these adjustments. And if I were to push in really deep, I can still see the background. So that's the reason why we're separating the foreground element for the background, so we can make these adjustments and not worry about distorting the background at all. So again, in something like this, you might just want to shape his body just to make him a little more athletic. Maybe reduce some of the wrinkles out of his pants. If this were a high-end athletic advertisement, you would want to make the athletic wear as perfect as possible. And this will be a technique that you would use for that. Notice that as I'm pushing pixels, I'm increasing and decreasing the size of the brush. You can use the left and right bracket keys on the keyboard for that. When you're done, you can just press OK. And I can click on this eye icon so you can see the before and the after. Another thing that you can do is apply a puppet warp adjustment. If you go into Edit, Puppet Warp, you should see a mesh. My mesh is disabled. This is probably what you're looking at. In the options bar, I like to disable the mesh just because I really don't need it. And what you can do is create points. So I'll create a point on his neck, one on his hip, and on his knees. And that will allow me to distort the image by clicking and dragging on these points. For example, if you notice he's sort of leaning forward, maybe he's been running for a while, he looks a little tired. So maybe I can just click on this point and drag it back just a little bit, just to give him just a little bit better posture. Again, these are all subjective adjustments. The point is that I'm making all these adjustments and I don't have to worry about distorting the background. It'll be more noticeable here if I create a point on his shoe and click and drag back. Notice how the area behind the shoe is revealed and there's no issues. I'll now click on his other shoe to create a point, and I can click and drag on that point to reposition his foot. One trick when using the Puppet Warp tool is if you hold Alt, Option on the Mac, when a point is selected, you get this little circle and you can click and drag to rotate it. So if something is not looking right, you can rotate the circle and hopefully it fixes any distortion issues that you may have. In this case, I'm not going to make any more adjustments. I'm just going to click on the check mark to commit the changes. I can click on the eye icon in the smart label in the layer, and you can see the before and the after. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this tool, the Puppet Warp tool, I have a tutorial that covers everything you want to know about this tool. I'll place a link to that video right below in the description. Don't forget to watch it right after this tutorial. But anyway, another thing that you can do is with the Move tool, just click on the runner layer and maybe you can place them in a different part of the image. So maybe you can place them here because you want room on the left side for advertisement copy or something like that. So by separating the background from the foreground, you can make really big changes to your image, even though this is not really a composite, it's just a photo. I probably pushed these adjustments just a bit too far, but I do think that they help illustrate the power of this technique. If you haven't watched my tutorial on blurring backgrounds, then I highly recommend watching it. I use exactly the same technique to get a much better and realistic blur. The link for this video is right below in the description. If this is your first time at the Photoshop training channel, then don't forget to click on that subscribe and notification buttons. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again in the next video.